This is Edgar of Tech Commander Repairs coming to you with another teardown. Today we're going to be working on this PS4 Pro. This is the CUH-7215B model. Find the model number right in here, but we're going to tear this down, clean it out. It just has a loud fan issue. So first thing we're going to do is, usually there's a little cover over here. Obviously this customer more likely has lost this. But with this little cover, you'd end up pulling from this side. You'll notice that you pull from over here, you lift it up, and then it exposes the hard drive. So with the hard drive here, we have a Phillips 1 screwdriver. So we'll just unscrew this. Put that aside and make sure we keep track of all of our screws. And from here, we can just pull out the hard drive caddy with the hard drive inside of it. That's the hard drive. If you want to upgrade this, you can upgrade to a solid state drive. But remove the hard drive and put that aside. Now we're going to, well, since we have the back here, we're going to take off the protective cover here. This is like security seal. It's right underneath this little black tape in the center. So we lift this up and it exposes the screw that's underneath. We have a black T8 security bit. We'll take a T8 driver. We'll just unscrew that. Put that aside as well. Lay it down with the top, the shiny PlayStation, shiny silver PlayStation, then the bottom with just this a black shiny PlayStation logo. Then we're going to take off the bottom here. So what you're going to do is you're going to come from the corners. Just going to lift the corner up, lift the other corner, and then there's a few little tabs that are holding on. You'll be able to see it. Just slightly pry it open. And there's one here's another little black tape. There's no screw under here. Let's remove that. We see we just pop this out as well with the center one. Do the same thing just to release the little plastic tabs that are on here. Might have to use a little pry tool just to get it off. Go. So we have that open, slightly lift up, and then we push forward. So lift, slide it forward. You see we have the bottom casing here. It's full of dust, so I have to clean that out. As a matter of fact, we put on some gloves. So we have the bottom exposed here. What we're going to do is take your microfiber cloth. If anything, just wipe it down, vacuum it if you have a vacuum cleaner. Just be very gentle, get all this dust off that scene. Now we're going to have a mixture of T8 screws and Phillips screws. So if you want to make it easier for yourself, just mark off where all the T8 screws, because we also have a T8 screw that's connect to the power supply. So what I do is use a black marker if you need and just mark off where all the T8 screws go. So now we marked where all those screws go. We're going to unscrew them with your T8 security bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's 11 T8 screws. Let's put that down. Now I know that all that's taken care of. I want to flip it back over and just take out the power supply. So in order to do that now, put it back on the side that has the shiny PlayStation logo. And we're going to pull from the front. We're going to put our fingers underneath here and lift up. Put under here, lift the corners, put them separately. It's kind of tough. If you need to use a little pry tool or anything to get a little bit of leverage on the corner, just pop that right at the corner itself. Pull back, slide it towards you. Now we have the top open. This is top cover. Again, we're going to wipe it down. Wipe it down, vacuum, brush it down, whatever it may be, just to get rid of all this dust. Now we have, in this model, we have 4 T8 screws on the top here. So we just unscrew these. That's a short one. We have another short one. Now we have a long screw. We have another long one. So we have 2 short and 2 long screws in the power supply on the top. Take off this little shield, put that aside. Just going to pop up the power supply. You can lift from the back here. Just lift it up slightly. Be very careful. Don't rush and pull this out. And then here's where a lot of people get into trouble. They try to pull directly from the board here, and they'll do too much and end up breaking from the board. Unplug from the power supply itself. There's a little cable here. Grab all the cables and gently wiggle side to side and pull towards you, and it'll come right out. Put that aside. Flip it back over. Now we're going to unplug the front fan over here because we don't really need that. We're going to unplug the cables for the eject button and power button. Plug this for the CD drive, light cable. We flip up this connector, flip it up. It's the only one that you have to flip up in order to get out. We're going to disconnect our antennas. Make sure you remember how these are routed as well. Lift that up, move that out the way, take the other one, get that out the way, take this white one, get that out the way. So now, if you need to, you can mark off all the areas that these Phillips head screws are in with a marker of another color, or if you just want to circle it just so to make it easy for you so you don't forget. So I'm going to take my Phillips 1 driver here and just unscrew all of these screws that are on top of the shield. Seems to be about 23 of these screws. They're all the same length, all the same size, and all Phillips 1. Put those to the side. Now we can take out, let's make sure we route these antenna cables now so they're not inside of the case. Move all these cables away. We have the fan unplugged. Now we're going to lift from the front. Oh, missing one on the side. So 24 screws. So lift from the front. Lift it straight up. There's little hooks in the back on this side, so just be mindful of that. Now we have this top shield out. We have our thermal pads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're actually obviously missing some that didn't stay attached to this, so we're going to look in our RAM chips and we're going to remove those because we need these. If your thermal pads are dried out, you can always order new thermal pads and just replace them, just cut them to the same size. And it should be good, but we're going to take this, put it to the side. Now we're going to remove the motherboard. So in this model, as we can see, it's all open. In another model, there's actually a little plate that's over this. And there's a bunch of screws that go into these little holes that are around the board. But obviously with this one it's not, so we're going to take our Phillips driver. We're going to unscrew these two screws that are holding the clamp down, the CPU clamp. It might be black, might be silver, but there's only two screws that look like this. So we're going to put that aside. We're going to take off the metal clamp. Obviously it's the little dimple that's on here. That's what goes onto the board. Just remember how you picked it up. Remember the orientation. Now we have the little plastic. Take this off the same way. Remember the orientation of that as well. From here now we can take the board out. So what we're going to do is make sure we get all the cables out the way. Just going to lift up on the board. Slide it towards us. Lift it up slightly because we still have that cable connected underneath. So now we have that out. Let's continue tearing this down. If you have, like I said, there's more thermal pads here, so be mindful of those. You want to make sure those are still here. If you want to put them aside, well, you make sure you put them back. I'm going to wipe off the old liquid metal, the old thermal paste that's on the heatsink. Use a rag with some 91%, at least 91% alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. Just rub that away, clean that up. Now we're going to do, there's a few screws here if you want to as well. Always be mindful, like I said, just mark off everything for where it needs to go. There's little arrows here, little triangles. So there's two screws that hold in this bottom shell to the chassis. So we just unscrew one, unscrew two, put these aside. Now we're going to lift out the bottom and expose the heatsink. And that's our heatsink here. So now if your PS4 is, the fan's loud or it's shutting down, so it's overheating, more than likely it's clogged. Maybe we can see from here, this heatsink has had dust that built up on it over years, like a little mat. So it's clogging the air from going through to move the hot air from the CPU. Take that off. From here, we just start cleaning off this heatsink itself. So take a brush. If you can, just brush, toothbrush, any soft bristle brush, just to loosen any of the thick pieces of dust that's on here. Use your vacuum cleaner. Just want to make sure we loosen all that. You come back behind it with your air duster or compressed air. So now we have our heatsink nice and clean. You can see right through it. See my blue glove underneath. So now we can have cool air going through this. Let's put this aside and continue cleaning down the fan. Just going to wipe off any dust. The fan itself has two little screws here. What I'm going to do again, just until you remember where everything is, just mark it off. Take out these two screws. Just going to put this down here. That's our fan. Let's get to cleaning the fan as well. Take our brush. Loosen any of this dust. Want to get between all these fins as much as you can. There's a lot of dust builds up in here too. Come from the top. Just try to knock loose as much as we can before we hit it with the compressed air or the air duster or the vacuum. This makes it a lot easier for the dust to move off of it once we're finished here. Let's get the air duster now. Now our fan is nice and clean. It's dust free. Let's put that aside. Just wipe off any dust that's in here as well. Use your brush, use your rag, use some alcohol. Just wipe down anything that's pretty stuck on. If you need to take out your Blu-ray drive, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 screws in order to take it out. So 1, 2, 3 right here in the center. Actually, no, I don't think I need that one. 3, 4, and 5. This long one. Just pull out your Blu-ray drive. Come through here, we just wipe off any dust. Use your air dust or vacuum to blow away anything. Let's put this to the side. Let's tear down let's wipe off the drive first. So the drive here, we have these rollers that end up getting dusty, and it actually stops the CD from being pulled in. So what we're going to do, we're going to take off this top cover. There's 2 screws in the back. These are smaller than the Phillips 1. Probably need a Phillips 0. We're going to do a Phillips 00. Unscrew these 2. There's 1. There's 2. We're going to lift it up. Take that cover off. If you want to, just dust it down with the air duster. What you can do now in order to clean up these rollers, if your games aren't really pulling in good, is take some isopropyl alcohol and take your rag, spray it gently, and now back here there's a little screw inside here. When you turn this screw, it actually turns the roller. So it's kind of like on the other side, right underneath this sticker, is where you would use it in order to remove if you had a game stuck in here. But just turn the screw, and while you're turning it, just wipe side to side on the rollers. Just get any dust that's on here. Do the other side. Just keep going in a circle a few times. Just wipe down to here. Try to stay away from the laser. There's laser right over here. You want to stay away from that because you don't want to mess that up. If you need to replace the laser, this is the process you would do too. You'd break this all down. But as for the rollers going, just cleaning it up. The rollers are now nice and sticky. So now we can put our cover back on top. So it has two little slots. So we're going to slide it in to the front first and then drop the back down. We're going to take our Phillips 00 screws and screw those into the back. We're going to go on to our mid frame, our chassis here. So just want to wipe this down, clean off as much dust as you can. Go through it with your brush, especially on the sides, because you get a lot of dust that builds up here. Air comes in from the side here, so you want to knock off any dust that you can. Do this on the other side, all by the fan as well, where the fan goes. Just a little grate over here. And you just come back now with your air duster or your compressed air. Alright, so let's reverse the steps. Let's put our Blu-ray drive back in. Let's make sure none of these cables are underneath it. Put everything in here. Cables are out the way. Let's use a Phillips 1 screwdriver to screw those back in. We've got the long black one that goes into the back. We got these three small silver ones going to the corner. Let's put our fan back in here. Fan had two screws. We marked these off. Now we can put our heatsink back in, nice and clean. Now you want to watch with these cables, make sure they're not stuck underneath. So just want to lay it in and then start moving your cables around. Little ribbon cables from the Blu-ray drive, lift them up. Front antenna cable. Make sure the cable for the fan is up as well. We have our thermal pads here. If you're missing some, replace them. But let's get our two Phillips screws. Screw this back in. We have that marked off, 1 and 2. Double check again with your cables. Make sure they're not stuck anywhere. Alright, let's move this to the side because now we're going to work on the motherboard here. I'm going to dust this down, just gently dusting it. So those pink thermal pads that were on the heatsink side cover these MOSFETs. So they get hot, so they definitely need it. So now what we're going to do, we're going to clean off the old thermal paste. You can use Q-tip, you can use, clean portion of your rag, just a little bit of alcohol if needed. Just wipe that off. Be very gentle here. You don't need to get everything that's around the chip, but you need to get everything that's on top of the chip. Get that nice and shiny. Nice and shiny here. We're going to add our thermal paste. I'm using Arctic MX4. It's a good thermal paste to be used. For these, I just like to do a nice thin line across the center. Close that up. We have a nice line in the center of that. We're going to take our board, we're going to put this back in. So what we're going to do is make sure we take the cable that we didn't unplug for the power supply, we're going to push it through this rectangle over here. Push through that rectangle. We're going to put all the ports in the back, line that up. And then we're just going to lay it down. We're going to make sure none of our cables are underneath the board as well. We're going to move everything out the way. Get our fan connector off to the side. So make sure everything sits fine. So our cable still didn't go completely through for the power connector. Just lift that up, make sure that goes through. Get all the rest of these connectors. And that laid right in its place. Next, we're going to get our top plate here. We're going to wipe off any dust that's on here. Matter of fact, we're going to take our plate and put this back where it belongs. This is for the apply pressure to the CPU and the heatsink itself. We're going to take our rod, take our plate here with the little dimple on it. This dimple side goes down. Then we take our two screws and we screw that in. Tighten it until it stops. Don't need to get any more than that. Just like to plug in this fan connector. Now we're going to come back to our top cover here. We're going to wipe off any dust, any dirt that's on here. Make sure we have all our thermal pads, these little black pads. If they're still stuck on here and they don't move when you shake them, they don't fall, then that's fine. If not, sometimes you may have to take it off and just place it on top of the RAM chips here. We'll take it, we'll do the back first. Clip in the back, have little hooks on it, and then we'll just move our cables out the way of all our connectors, make sure nothing's underneath. Make sure nothing's underneath here. We see we have power button, the eject button, all the cables for the Blu-ray drive, antennas. We have the 3 cables. They're out the way. Now let's screw in all of those screws. Let's start with all the Phillips screws. Take the Phillips screws. Oops. So we have all of those screws in. Let's start connecting the cables. So with these little cables, just hold the blue itself and then slide it in between. Just push it straight in. See, there's a black little line on those. You'll see it, and that just means that the black line has to reach the edge of that connector. For the Blu-ray drive. Lift up the connector here, and then we're going to place this bigger cable in between. Slide that in and clamp it down. We're going to take our cables now. Let's make sure we have all the dust off of this as well. Going to take our front cable. Going to route it underneath this little connector, and you're going to see a connector on the board. It says F. You plug that antenna into that. That's for the front. We have this white one that goes in between this little connection, so it goes underneath the metal frame into this opening, and it says W on it. So we connect that one. Now we have this longer black one. If you remember, it was routed underneath these two little covers on the top case. Put it into these little black connectors on the side. They hold it there, and then we plug it into this connector that says B on it. So now from here, I'm going to flip it over to install the power supply. Make sure we wipe all this out. Where we dust is make sure we did a good job with everything. Let's go over it again. So at this part of the video, somehow my mic ended up dying, so I just ended up just going to do a voiceover. But you just continue brushing off whatever dust, and you hit it with your air duster or compressed air just on the sides just to get all that dust out. The next thing we're going to do is plug in the power supply. But firstly, let's wipe it off, wipe off any dust on both sides. From here, we're going to clean out the inside of the power supply itself, because the air from the fan actually blows through the power supply to kind of keep it cool. So we want to get any dust out of that if we can. So we can use the air duster or compressed air, and we get all that out. So once that's out, we're going to lay it down, and what we're going to do, we're going to place it down. We're going to connect that same white cable, the 5-volt power supply, into this power supply. So just lay it down. We can see it's keyed, so it can only go in one way. So we lay it down and we push that plug in. We make sure it's nice and snug. You might want to pull it out a little just to make sure, but push it back in, make sure it's completely pushed in there tight. We'll turn it over. We're going to route that cable into that little hook that's inside the power supply. Then we're just going to lay it down nice and flush. It should line up perfectly, and just push it down. It should lock into place. Now we're going to add the metal shield that was on top of the power supply. We're going to put that there. Then we're going to add our long screws into the corners. And then we have our shorter screws at the top. So we have our power supply plugged in. Going to flip it back over. And now we're going to plug in, we're going to screw in all of the Phillips screws that, well, the T8 screws that we took out, that we marked off on the board. Let's get our T8 screws. We're going to screw this in. We mark these off. One. Now we have all of those screwed in. Let's put on the bottom cover. We're going to wipe off the bottom cover itself. Let's wipe this down, clean it off with all that dust. Hit it with the air duster. We're going to start by hooking it. This goes in, hooking it on the front, then pulling it back to us and lining up these two tabs, and then squeezing it. You hear it clip. From here, you can add your T8, your black T8 security screw right into the center. Put the top on now. Any last minute dusting, make sure we get all this. We have our top. Get this cleaned out. Wipe off any dust, any debris. Go back over with the air duster. Now we have the Sony logo. This goes to the front of the system. So we're going to take this little hook in the back, hook those onto the corner in the back, pull it towards us. Make sure you fill it and then give it a push. Clips right in place. We're going to take our hard drive, clean off any dust that's on here. We're going to take our hard drive. Might be able to do it this way. We're going to take our hard drive and we're going to drop it in. It'll go in one way. You want to make sure the portion in which you're screwing, this is going to be closer to the system. So slide this in. It's locked in place. You'll see the hole lined up. Now we're going to screw in the, this is a screw that has all the PlayStation logos on it. The box, triangle, circle, and X. These are on all their hard drives. Just going to screw that in. If you had a system that had the hard drive cover, you just put it in this side first and then press it down. But that's how you tear down and clean out a PS4 Pro. So that's the end of another teardown video. If you learned something or this helped you, hit that like button, subscribe to see more. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. If there's any other videos or devices, game systems, phones, iPads that you'd like to see me repair, leave that down below as well, and I'll try to make a video just for you for that. Now we're off to the next repair.